Lee Jasper is a man that has been at the forefront of race issues in the black community for over 30 years. But lately I haven't seen him in the public eye. He served as Director for Police and Inequalities, and he was advisor to Mayor Livingston from 2004 to 2008. He's been very vocal about gun crime in the black community. And I remember the newspapers running a hostile campaign against Lee Jasper. There were all kinds of accusations about misuse of public funding, but he was actually cleared of all misconduct. In my opinion, Lee Jasper doesn't seem like the type of man to shy away from a conversation. And he also doesn't seem like the type of man to worry about ruffling feathers when he speaks. And I can relate to that. I believe Lee Jasper is a very important figure to the black British community. So I decided to sit down with him.
Whose world is this? Whose world is this?
Lee Jasper, thank you for joining me.
No worries, man. Glad to
Right, my viewers know me a little bit,
Uh-huh.
but I want to let them know you.
Okay.
Everyone that I have a conversation with, I want the viewers to kind of know.
Yeah.
So, who is Lee Jasper?
Lee Jasper, born in Manchester, 60 years of age, married for 30 of those, 9 children, 7 grandchildren.
9 children.
9 children.
Wow.
You're
You're a busy man.
Building dynasties out here.
Okay, fair enough. All right.
7 grandchildren. My oldest grandchild is 22. As I say, born in Manchester. My father's Jamaican. My mother's half Sierra Leone, half Irish. I live with my Sierra Leone grandfather.
Okay.
In Manchester for a little while. And yeah, that's me. That's where I come from. My mother's from Cuba. So a little bit of Cuban, a little bit of African, a little bit of Irish, a little bit of Jamaican. That's not really, that's a hot blood mix.
I grew up seeing you.
Yeah.
Right? And kind of realizing that you were you were an individual that cared about the black community. Why do you care so much about the black community?
I think 2 reasons. One, my mum was a formidable battler of injustice and bullying and so on. She couldn't bear it. I think she was sort of physiologically inclined to go nuts.
So that's where you got it from?
I think so. That, and the other thing is I'd spent some time growing up watching my colleagues, my peer group in my school.
Right.
We're all of the same age. And all we're doing is getting excluded from school or arrested from the police. And that was my teenage years in the 70s.
What years? 70s?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you were excluded a few times, arrested a few times?
I was excluded 5 times.
5 times?
Yeah, I left school without any qualifications.
So, okay, that's interesting. Because I was actually reading a Guardian article today which said that black Caribbean boys are 3 times more likely to be excluded from school.
Well, that was national average. I think locally, in like Lewisham, I think it's currently 7 times more likely.
7 times more?
Yeah, in Lambeth, I think it's something like 8 times more likely. So the national average is 3, but when you go to particular areas, those figures become ever more acute.
So it was like that when you were younger, and it's like that now.
Yeah.
So it hasn't not much has changed.
Not much has changed. I think slightly less are being excluded from the horrendous figures of the 70s, but nevertheless, it's still a substantive impact upon young people's education. And then now you've got this curious thing called internal exclusion, where you're not excluded from school, but you're excluded from the class. So you go and sit in a spare room somewhere.
Another room,
for hours and days and weeks on end. And they're not declared as exclusions, so you don't know the true figure. And then you've got some religious schools and some free academies who don't monitor black exclusions at all.
Wow.
So who knows what the real figure is?
You said, all right, so you said in the 80s you were either excluded or arrested. Did you ever go to prison?
Yeah, I went to prison. Had several charges for assault on police officers. So it was just part part of the background at the time, and spent some time in Strange Ways. That was before the 1990s riots, where it was still a Victorian.
What was the police like at that time? What were they like?
They're like fascist police. They were Boer police. They were police officers who would pull you up on the street and say, "Listen, you fucking nigger, make sure whatever it is, blah blah blah. If you're not complying right away, if you're not looking down and showing deference to the uniform right away, you're getting battered right there and then on the street, and then slowly in the van and batter some more. When you get to the police station, they're gonna kick you all the way from the van to your cell."
So you had actual altercations like that with the police yourself?
Regularly. It was almost. There was a stage in about the late 70s, after 76. There was a mild uprising in 76. People didn't get caught on history, but we went out wilding in 76. Not to the extent of 81 and 86, but nevertheless. And people just don't realise. They used to have little National Front badges, and they used to wear them.
The police used to wear them?
Yeah, and they used to wear them underneath their lapels. So when they used to get you, they used to flash their badge at you like that, so you know from the get-go, right? Now I will kill you. I will kill you here today if I get away with it. So as soon as you saw that, you had to
just be quiet.
No, well you had to. We practiced our one-punch rule, because of those days police officers came in singles.
Right.
So we practiced the one-punch rule. So you practiced knocking a man out and sprinting 100 meters in like 9 seconds now, 12 seconds.
Like Usain Bolt, you punch and bolt.
Punch and gone. So that's how we used to defend ourselves against.
Because we're talking about the police force now. As institutionally racist back then as it is now, what would you say?
Yeah, I'd say it's worse.
It's worse now.
Yeah, because the numbers are worse. If you take the publication of the Stephen Lawrence report in 1999, 25% of black people were being stopped for stop and search, making up 2% of the population. Right. But that was only 100,000 people that were being stopped and searched. Today it's 1.2 million. So when we want 25% of 1.2 million is a hell of a lot more than the 25%, the 25,000 that were involved at the time of Stephen Lawrence. When you look at the growth of the increase of stop and search, it's frightening.
So what? Because Commissioner Bernard Hogan-Howe said that the institutionally racist police force, we should take it on the chin, or something along those lines. Was that what you said? Yeah,
what he was saying is, if people say my force is racist, I suppose we've got to take it on the chin. It's no admission that the police force is institutionally racist.
Right.
And of course, his boss, who employed him because Bernard Hogan-Howe is very much a yes man, Boris Johnson, declared in July of 2009 on their report on racism in the Metropolitan Police that it was no longer an institutionally racist service. So it'd been declared.
Do you believe that?
Oh, you're joking. If anything, the systematic inequality in the police service is getting much worse.
Right.
Your first-time offender in Brixton, in Lambeth, if you get caught with £20, let's say a £20 bag of weed, and it's your first offence, and a white guy gets caught with the same bag of weed and it's his first offence, you're 50% more likely to go to court for it than he is. He will get a caution. That's research done by the Release Drugs Charity. If you get caught with 20 pounds of cocaine, you're 70% more likely to be sent to jail. If you read the government's report on race equality in the prisons, it says even where white people have a more extensive criminal record, black people are still more likely to go to jail than them for the same offence. That's an apartheid level of justice.
So Lee, how did a guy that you told me go from being expelled from school, trouble with the police, gone to prison? How did that guy then become like the centre guy for black people in politics?
I think it's an interesting journey. I remember when I was interviewing for the Commissioner of Police when Sir Ian Blair was getting the job as the Commissioner before when Ken was in office. And we were doing the interviews, and it suddenly dawned on me that I'd made this journey from a prison bunk in a stinking cell, and here I am now deciding which one of these dudes gets this job. And I think the journey for that is, the only thing I can tell you is master your brief. There's one thing that I learned from Malcolm X. I was always impressed by Malcolm's capacity for understanding the detail and the knowledge. He wasn't just a rhetorical speaker. He's one who brought history, academia to bear on his subject matter. It wasn't a lazy understanding of the issue. I made determined once I'd come out of jail and went to university. When I got to university, the first thing that I recognised on the very first day is how many dickheads have degrees. And I thought to myself, oh my God, we've been conned. Even my spars, them that are in strange ways now, are got more intellect than these people. You know, the most lowest man on my team on the road is cleverer than this professor.
Right.
And I thought to myself, we've been conned. I ate up knowledge then. And then I researched black history, so I became a master in that field.
Okay.
Then I researched global politics, and I became a master in that. When I went into policing, I didn't just say the police are bad. You know, I went into chapter and verse.
Right.
I exposed corrupt police officers. When I used to, when I was working at the Mangrove on All Saints Road in Notting Hill in the late 80s, you know, PC Superintendent Clyde Pearman, who then went on to be the police commissioner, came and arrested 11 members of the Mangrove and planted heroin and cocaine on those 11 members.
Wow.
Yeah, and tried to fit up the whole organisation as being a drug-running organisation. Unfortunately, he fitted them up with 100% heroin and 100% cocaine. And he left his fingerprints all over the place. So we were able, 11 different juries acquitted 11 different men.
Wow.
But we knew that the political organisation of the Mangrove, just like Liverpool Black Workers, just like the Black and White Cafe in St Paul's, just like Moss Side, had organisations who were defending community and man,
right,
and were being subject to political intimidation by the police. So my view is twofold. One is, I couldn't bear to see the waste of humanity and intellect that had taken such a toll on my peers.
Right.
Well, I'm not having that again. You know, I know people who've got mental illness that had they had that right opportunity, they'd been engineers and professors by now.
Right.
That drove me. And the second was master my brief, and my third was my dear old mum's passion for the underdog.
Because, like I said, well, once you got into that position of power, right, you were now subject to all kinds of attacks.
Yeah.
So people can see it from the outside looking in, right? I can read the paper and I can put the paper down. However, that was your life.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, it's a horrendously galling experience, you know, to come out and see your name on the newspaper stands. You know, Lee Jasper in yet another fraud scandal. 3.25 million, where's the money gone, Lee? Right. Front page, you're sitting on the tube and man's got you on the front page of the Evening Standard.
Wow. And
then he goes into this middle and there's a double page spread. Sunday, you're dreading. Sunday, a day of relaxation, because you know somebody's going to do a further exposure.
Right.
They targeted me, 17 black organisations that they all accused of being involved in some way in fraudulent activity. They spent 2.5 years looking at that, and they didn't come up with a postage stamp. Not even one of those organisations.
So there was nothing to the...
There was nothing to the claims, and that's what they came of. But during the process, I mean, I nearly had a nervous breakdown. You know what really saved me? The gym.
Really?
Yeah, I had to go in the gym. It's like a dojo for me, because the stress was so incredible. You remember, you're talking about from November till March. That's 5 months. The only relentless break you got is at Christmas. And just after New Year, it just started again.
Right.
If it's not the radio, it's the TV and the newspapers. So every day.
So it was story after story after story after story after story.
All the time, relentless attack. And I had to go, the stress was so great for me. I had to go in the gym. I had to bring my mother from Manchester to live with me. I'd come out in the morning, my bins would be emptied, because if you're under a press intrusion and they want to find out your private life, they'll empty your bins for you.
Right.
So you get up in the morning and your bins are mysteriously emptied. Really, somebody's taken that to sift through it to see if there's any further incriminating evidence. An uncle I hadn't spoken to for 30 years was visited in Manchester to say, can you give us more information? School friends were visited. My kids were followed to school.
Wow.
My son got into fights because kids said to him, your dad's a thief. And he got into a fight. So now I brought that energy to my family. This is notion, he's having some kind of affair with some Asian woman. You know, my wife for 30 years had to endure that. I mean, I saw David Kelly kill himself after 4 weeks of being exposed by Number 10 as the scientist in the sexed up Iraq dossier case.
Right.
4 weeks that man cracked. Trust me, I was on the verge of thinking, you know what, maybe I should just go to Waterloo Bridge and jump in. Because 5 months, 2 weeks, 3 days, 5 days, I'm a battle-hardened soldier, I can take it.
I'm glad you didn't though.
Yeah, boy. But with the two things: love of the family, strength of the family, basically black women around me, because black men will run when you're covered in toxic shit.
Yeah.
People will cross the road to avoid you. Black women will run towards you. So, a couple of black men I can mention, with distinction, who came out and supported me. A majority of black women, but it was a horrendous time. Nearly broke up my marriage, nearly broke up my life. I'm just so blessed to have been able to fully recover from it, really. It was an attempt to force me to commit suicide.
I'm a black nationalist myself.
Yeah.
That's my politics. So I've always said to black people, listen, okay, the system is going to do what it's going to do, right? And so for us to navigate our way through, we are going to have to come up with systems of our own to navigate our way through the current system. So it's no surprise to any black person that the police is institutionally racist, right?
Yeah.
So now it's like, okay, so what next?
Well, I think we've got to fundamentally, we've got to do two things, I think. One is we've got to take some care of some of our policing aspects and needs ourselves.
Okay.
All right? So there's no point.
So police ourselves.
You've got to police yourselves to some extent.
Okay.
Obviously, there are issues like murder and and other things that are rightly in the hands of the police. But there's a lot of matters that we can sort out internally as a community. Secondly, you've got to reform the police, radically reform the police.
Do you think that's possible, though?
Of course, it's possible. Anything's possible.
The current police force can be.
Well, look at stop
reformed.
and search in New York, right? One of the most racist NYPD. I mean, they're notorious for their racism. What did they do? They abolished stop and frisk. What's happened in that city? Murder has declined. And stop and frisk, which is our stop and search, has virtually disappeared. Now, what that points to me is, and I've had experience of this in London, is to what extent the police were aggravating and amplifying those
things.
gang divisions through their discriminatory use of stop and search. So you end up with a kid in New York and you say, boy, if you don't give me what I want, I'm going to take you over to the Bronx and let you out on the wrong side of town. And they do that with kids here in London. Yeah, I've heard it many a time. So yeah, I do think they can be reformed, and there's evidence that it
because you worked, correct me if I'm wrong, but you worked with Ken Livingston and Trident also?
Yeah, I was the policing director for London, so it means I gave the mayor advice about policing for London.
Right. Okay, so what do you think of Trident now?
I think Trident's been hijacked. I think when I launched Trident, I had a long queue of black mothers whose daughters have been brutally murdered at my doorstep saying, Lee, what are black leaders doing about this crime?
Sorry, for the people that don't know, what is Trident?
Trident was set up as a response to intra-black community violence, where in the mid-90s, we had in Lambeth, we had two police informers called Errol Denton and Green, who were Jamaican psychopaths, literal psychopaths. They were hired by the Metropolitan Police Service from Jamaica, imported in here, and then they were given a license to go around and crack the Jamaican Yardie crack cocaine ring.
Wow.
And then while they were doing it, they raped, pillaged, plundered, held up entire dances. Boom, 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 empty your pockets. Eventually they raped and stabbed, one of them raped and stabbed Marcia Laws, this is when I came into the picture, right? Brutally raping and stabbing her, right? In front of her children.
Wow.
And then subsequently to that, we had another informer come into the country, this time brought in by somebody of Jamaican origin here, who shot women bound, gagged on their knees, point blank in their heads, 3 mothers in front of their children, as a failure to pay some drug debt. So I had mothers coming to my house all the time saying, you speak about the police, you speak about injustice, what about, why aren't they catching the killer of my son?
Right.
And I said to myself,
then Operation Trident.
I said, let's try and do something. And Trident was born out of it.
So now you said
Yeah.
you think it's been hijacked.
Well, it's definitely because what happened is that Boris Johnson, whereas before it was a discreet service that was only in relation to black on black murder,
Right.
where a group of black people from the community would go out with police officers and say, we need to give these people up, man.
Okay.
Right, so you work in partnership.
Okay.
That was the basis of it. When Boris came in, he then said, no, we don't want Trident as a discreet premium murder investigation service for black people. We want it as an anti-gangs unit, inferring that all
So,
gangs in London
When
are
did
black.
that change? When did that change come?
2009, I think.
And that was under Boris Johnson.
Yeah, he'd been in power 2 years by that stage.
So I'm guessing you don't like Boris Johnson very much.
No. That would be an understatement.
Right.
I've still got the scars on my back from the 2008 campaign where I was on the front page of the Evening Standard, the Daily Mail, the Daily Telegraph, the Sunday Times, every day.
Do you know, I watched that, I read that.
Yeah, from
They went after you.
listen, they cleaned my closet, man. There was nothing left. I'm the most other than Winston Silcott.
Right, yeah.
I think I must be one of the most investigated black men in the United Kingdom.
Wow.
And they spent 2.5 years investigating me. I was investigated by the Audit Commission, HMR Tax, the police, the GLA,
So what were the accusations that they lobbied against you?
everything. £3.5 million giving money to black organisations that were criminal organisations, actually funding organisations to get kids out of
They
gangs.
said you were funding criminal
Yeah,
organizations.
absolutely. Yeah. I had a big unit down there. I gave an entire 70 square foot, 1,000 foot building down by the Oval, Offaly Road,
Right.
called Offaly Works.
Yeah, I know Offaly.
I gave that over to the black community in Lambeth just to do anti-gang work.
Right.
With everybody down there. It was so huge. Supplementary school, filming, recording, taekwondo, everything was down there.
Right.
And they said that was a nest of criminals. And what we were doing is working with the PDC.
So you were basically trying to help your own community.
I was bringing the PDC off the road.
PDC.
Yeah, that's what we were
For
doing.
people that don't know, PDC is quite a notorious gang.
Absolutely. And we were working with them to bring him off the road. We were saying the music that you're making is enough, right, to be able to give you the kind of income you want. Come into the studio. And so what we used to do, and every Sunday afternoon, because my office was just around the corner from Offaly Works, we used to run gang mediation. So we'd have all sorts of gangs coming in who were popping off at each other and try and get them a mediation. But because I had the recording studio and all the resources, I was able to say, you can't come in here unless you agree to drop the beef.
Drop the beef. Okay.
So before they dropped the beef, they had to have a discussion. So Sunday afternoons, 4 o'clock would be mediation.
So you got Trident, right?
Yeah.
So you seem like you were actually trying to help,
Yeah.
right? That's what
Yeah.
that's what it seems like to me.
Yeah.
You got Trident. Now Trident is an organisation that apparently tries to help.
Today.
Right? That's what it tries to do. It tries to help.
Right.
Right. So the police force is institutionally racist.
Yeah.
Is it possible for them to have an organisation in there that helps
Well, not.
black people?
It is possible. So if you're a victim of
Because
rape,
it sounds a bit oxymoronish to me.
well, if you're a victim of rape, and the rape unit comes to investigate and they prosecute your case, and you're a black woman, then you can say, yes, the police services work for me.
Right.
So it is possible, but the problem is that it's like the default. It's like the default setting of British society is institutionally racism. There are periods where they go for good practice and stretch themselves, but they always snap back. And that's what's happened, with the United Kingdom in terms of equality, race equality, and so on, and tackling institutionalized racism.
Because now we got a big knife crime problem,
yeah,
right? And so I understand that your family, your son,
my
was
son,
stabbed.
absolutely. My son's not a gang member or any such thing. We've lived in Brixton for 30 years. He's coming home from rugby practice one day, pops out of the tube station just by our house, sees a fight happening involving one little guy who was a pupil at his school. And so he's been attacked by a big guy with a knife. Son being what it is, Dad taught him, don't walk away, son, if you can do something.
Right.
And so he made an intervention by grabbing this kid, and the same time as he tried to grab the kid, the offender lunged at him, stabbed him. And so we were, for that 2 hours in King's with tubes in and out of his body, waiting
Wow.
to be told if our son was going to live or die.
Is he okay now?
He's fine, yeah. He's 1 inch away from his artery, because if you can imagine your hip flexor here,
Right.
the blade went in there. So you know it's a major artery to your leg. So he was very lucky. So yeah, we've been personally affected by knife crime, but not only me. I mean, I've counselled. People don't realise, I spend a lot of my time counselling the mothers of the dead,
Right.
giving them trauma therapy, giving them counselling, trying to raise some money so I can pay for funerals and send them on holidays and stuff like that. That's almost as important as anything else that we can do in relation
Most definitely.
to these issues.
Do you think our current mayor of London is helping that, Sadiq Khan?
No, I think he's in the right general direction, but I don't think he's got the advice around him that he needs to come up with the real creative policy that will make a real difference in relation to tackling violence in our community. Because it's interesting. People talk about knife violence,
Yeah.
but the biggest act of violence in our community is the murder of black women through domestic violence. The figures are far higher than knife violence.
Right.
But you wouldn't.
I haven't heard that.
People would not necessarily know that because it's not the image that the media wishes to portray.
Yeah.
The most frightening image is not of a black man killing his wife. We're happy for that to go on. What they're trying to do is actualize the image of the dangerous black youth with a knife in his back pocket and ready,
Right.
and will kill at a moment's notice. And that's a useful trope for them to use to smear all black men, all black communities.
Because, all right, so I'm just going to give my take now because, like I said, I'm a nationalist
Yeah.
at my core.
Yeah.
So I am about, like I said, I'm about creating systems for ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, to help ourselves.
Yeah.
So, and I always use an analogy of a rainforest. If you woke up in a rainforest tomorrow, there's poisonous snakes, poisonous frogs, there's jaguars, there's a whole load of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can really bitch and complain about the forest, or you can do something as to how to get through and live within that forest. And so I find for myself, I find a lot of people do bitch and complain and don't try to use the forest or what's around them, right, and find systems as to how to live. I think that a lot of black people have become very used to relying on a system that we know does not benefit us to the fullest degree of what it can do. So my son's 5, right? And after school he comes home and he's doing literacy books for 7-year-olds and maths for 7-year-olds, and he's 5, right? Now the only reason why he's doing that is because I love him. Yeah. The system's not paid to love my child. No. Right? I love him. Yeah. So the reason why I always speak to black people, I say, who loves you more than you? So what are you going to do? Because just like I love my son, I'm going to do for him. The system does not pay to love you. No. And I think we have relied on, we will complain about a system, oh, the police system, oh, the education system. That's 50-50. You can get through or you can not get through. But what extra are you doing? Because I'm doing extra for my son so he can, but we sit down there complaining about something. A lot of us, I'm not saying all of us, but we sit down complaining and it's like, well, we actually have the tools at our disposal to create something, just like you did. Yep. But now it's like we need to come together more so than we have to do something.
I think you're absolutely right. I think in this post-Brexit time that we're in, you're watching the sort of middle-aged nervous breakdown of Western society. Right. They've seen their overall access to global GDP go from 88% in 1998 down to 50% now, and it's calculated to go down to 25%. So they understand that their grip on the world in terms of white Anglo-Saxon Protestant economics is loosening. And Europe history is that when Europe faces economic decline, it unleashes racism to distract the population. So racism in the United Kingdom and Europe can only get worse for our community because their economic situation can only decline still further. And on opposite that, you've got the rise.
So you think there's going to be a bigger rise of racism?
Yeah, absolutely. There is now increased racist attacks since the Brexit vote, religious attacks since the Brexit vote. There is a degree of nationalism and a willingness for white people to say things to black people on tubes and trams that
I've seen some videos.
Yeah, that stuff was supposed to be looked back in the 50s, not today. And the other thing is, it's quite curious, is that how people are being affected by the same neoliberal racism. We're not immune to it, even though we're victims of it. We're not immune to it because it's such a powerful social virus on your media and on your TV and in your newspapers. You end up believing that Brexit was a good thing.
But this is the thing though, Lee, right?
Stop Eastern Europeans and I'll get a job.
I don't think, right, nationalism needs to be violent.
No.
I don't think it needs to be. I'm a nationalist. I'm not violent. I'm not advocating the killing of anyone or shouting at anyone on the tubes and all this kind of stuff. I think that a lot of people generally get nationalism a bit mixed up. Like you can be a British nationalist, and I advise everyone to be one. Chinese be a nationalist, you know, like Indian be a nationalist. You're for your people. You want to do for your people. Go ahead. I think what happens is some people think nationalism means we're supposed to hate someone. Or someone's
I think
supposed to be
nationalism has been hijacked because every time I see a Union Jack, I have to check myself and not start running. Because when I grew up, when I saw that flag coming, I knew trouble was never far behind it.
Right.
So it might be that your generation has a slightly different orientation to it.
Right.
My generation, I've seen what nationalism, ugly, white, supremacist nationalism looks like. And I'll tell you what it looks like. It comes in national garbs, dressed in a suit, trying to convince black people that it's a non-racist entity. That's what I've seen, you know.
No, I hear you because I mean I had an interview with Tommy Robinson, and people were saying people still say a lot of stuff about Tommy Robinson, whether you think he's a racist or not, like people can decide whatever. But if he's because I asked him in an interview if he was a nationalist, and he said he's a British nationalist, and I said okay, so I don't see you calling for the death of anyone. Do you know what I mean? I told him I was a nationalist too, and I'm not calling for the death of anyone. I'm thinking if we actually understand each other's politics more, then there can be a conversation has to be had. I'm just saying, because the more we don't have conversations is the more we might build up what we think the other one is thinking.
I think an inclusive British nationalism in the way that you describe it is moving farther away, not coming closer.
Right, okay.
I accept the point that you make about discussion, and I'm one like this. My view is I'd rather debate with Tommy Robinson than ban him. Do you know what I mean? Because if he
hear what he said.
Yeah, because if he is a racist, I'll be able to expose that. If he isn't, then I'll be able to say to people we've been sold a lie.
Right.
So my view is that freedom of speech is a sort of a concept that is bandied about, but the way the law is applied in relation to freedom of speech is very, very selective. Right. So Haiti Hopkins can get away with saying certain things. Right. You be a black Muslim and stand up on the street of a Brixton corner and start saying the equivalence of that sort of stuff, you're going to get arrested. Yeah. So it's a freedom of speech for some and not freedom of speech for others. I'm an advocate of freedom of speech, but let it be for everybody.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Because there's certain things I want to say that I feel constrained in saying.
What is it you want to say? What is it you want to say?
I'm going to say it on my show next week.
Okay, fine. No, I agree. I'm just for...
There is a progressive nationalism, but an inclusive British... Ain't no black in that Union Jackson, and they ain't going to be anytime soon.
Listen, I agree. I always say, listen, we occupy the bottom of the social and economic ladder.
Correct.
Globally, not even just in England, like globally, no matter where we go. So if we don't band together in some way, shape or form and understand we have a shared experience, then we're languishing. We're just gonna be constantly languishing. So I always say, okay, you're here. I don't hate Britain. I don't advise people to hate British people or hate Britain or hate the society that they're in. Understand it. I'm all about understanding something. I'd prefer to, if I'm in the rainforest, I want to understand that snake, how it moves. What it's going to do to given a certain situation.
See, that's the approach of a rational human being. Find out the facts. You see, the thing is with us, we don't master our brief. So we get up there, we say knife crime. When's the last time you saw a black leader said, oh, actually, we're killing our women. We are killing our own women. A bigger number than that. Knife crime. Oh, what about the sexual abuse of black children? Why are there more black children in care having been subjected to sexual abuse in our own community? And why aren't we speaking about that violence? We let the white man define our violence as knife crime, and we don't even have the good sense, even though we live in our own community, to say, yo, that is a problem, but we got other problems of violence. Trying to deal with knife crime is like looking through a keyhole, seeing the tail of an elephant and assuming it's a snake.
Right, yeah.
And so you can't deal with violence in isolation. Can't deal with that violence, and then elder violence, and then child sexual. I have to do violence as a whole.
As a whole, yeah.
Because the infection is as a whole. And if I'm going to be violent to you, then it's likely I'm going to be violent to my children.
Right.
It's likely I'm going to be violent to my wife.
Right.
If I am violent, I've probably watched my mother be
abused or beaten or something like that.
And I've come out thinking
that it's okay.
That it's okay, or that certain men a hatred of men because they beat up my mother. So I think you're right to have not a fixed approach to approaching problems, because I think that's the best way you can come to some objective understanding.
And that's what I'm trying to do.
Of the issue, and you're doing it well.
That's what I'm trying to do. So, what does now the future hold for you?
Global world domination, anything. Yeah, I mean, I'm 60 now. I'm thinking about legacy. So I'm thinking about having 30 years on the front line. What can I leave for this next generation that can give them the tools to avoid some of the mistakes I made?
Right.
You spoke earlier about our dependency culture. I'm part of the generation that is in part responsible for that dependency culture. Post riot in 81 and 86, ours was one of the only black organisations at the time who said, do not accept the government task force regeneration money, because if you do, for youth projects and new housing projects and new employment projects, because if you do, what they tried to do is buy off the radical section of the struggle, and people just walked into it blindly, and people got jobs, and in the end everybody was on a grant. Some of the most radical people on the road who attacked even police airstrips. I remember in Liverpool when we had a disturbance in Moss Side, one of the most violent ones. We called Liverpool because the police were sending helicopters down from their airfield up in Anfield, and them boys, they went up and firebombed the helicopter. It went down.
Wow.
You understand? So we had a kind of unity and understanding of our purpose that seems to be so.
Talking about unity and understanding of purpose, the Notting Hill Carnival is big.
My baby.
It's your baby.
I love it.
Right. Okay. So what is the future for the Notting Hill Carnival now? Because I see it changing.
Look,
because they were talking about it changing venue. I mean, where it's going to go. Then they were talking about they were going to start people paying to go. Like it was all kinds of stuff.
Look, let's face it. Notting Hill Carnival is the most successful black cultural event in Europe. Right?
Okay.
The Carnival second only to the Rios and so on and so forth. That carnival's got the potential to become a world carnival, like Rio and whatever.
Okay.
My view is you do need to think about changing the venue, but let that be a community.
But it can't be Notting Hill then.
No, you don't have to. You can end in Notting Hill. You don't have to start in Notting Hill.
Okay.
You could start at one end of, you could start in South London, go over Victoria, through Hyde Park up Park Lane and straight into Notting Hill, or any other point on that route. So you could end in Notting Hill. The fact is, I took my children to Carnival for years. I never take my children to Carnival now.
Why?
Because I can't get to see the costumes. I haven't come up to Carnival to listen to sound system that I can listen to every day of the week on my car radio on a weekend. I come to see Carnival spectacle. I come to see the power and the majesty of steel band, of creative artistry in terms of the costume and the themes and the things that people are bringing. This echo of a resistance against slavery and racism. I come to see that magical culture, right? And all I'm doing is fighting myself through crowds, right? And smelling weed and can't see the carnival,
Right.
Because you can't get anywhere near it for 90% of the time.
Right.
When I was in the mayor's office, I did a survey of people who went to Carnival. 80% of them go for the sound systems.
Right.
It should be called London Sound System Festival, because that's what it is. If it was my view, I'd take the sound systems out. I'd say, y'all have a sound system festival over there another time of the year. When I come to Carnival, I'd like to see steel pan.
Right.
If I'm going to hear a sound system, let me hear some calypso. Let me hear some rumba. Let me hear some, Carnival music.
All right then, Lee. Well, in closing, I'd like to ask this question. What would you, knowing what you know now, what would you say to the younger version of yourself, if you could?
I'd say, do not fight all those battles outside those police stations. Do not march up and down for thousands of miles in defense of liberties and for black victims. Create a black economy. because once you create a black economy, you can then afford to fight those battles with much more effectiveness than you could otherwise could. So black economy and self-organization are the only keys to our liberation.
I like that.
What would you say?
What would I say to a younger version of myself?
You're young now, anyway.
I look young. I look young, but I'm like 36 now.
Okay, you are young.
Listen, I'm getting older by the day. What would I say to myself? I actually quite like where I am.
Okay.
So
well done so far then.
Yeah. So it's like it's a thing of do what you keep doing. I would say. I would tell myself to do what I keep doing.
All right. Don't be diverted.
Yeah. Don't be diverted. Do what you keep doing.
Sounds good advice to me.
Yeah. I think you've been a very important figure in the black community for a very long time.
Thank you.
And I hope the youth do watch this, or even people that hadn't watched this now know a little bit more about you. When they see your face, they know exactly who you are and what you've done.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to be here, and I've enjoyed the conversation.
Listen, Lee Jasper, it's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much,
man.
bro.
Cheers.